Good evening. It is the end of the 12th day, or Lul 13 tomorrow, right? Yud Gimel. And we're studying the book of Yona. We're in the very beginning on the third verse. So we covered the introduction of who Yona is, where he came from, what's the whole point of his mission. And we got to a point where Yona was celebrating Simchat Bet HaShoeva. It was the holiday of Sukkot, and he was found his way, despite roadblocks, to Yerushalayim, and he was celebrating Simchat Bet HaShoeva, the party that we have every night on Chol HaMoed Sukkot. And over there, due to the Simcha, it was the right place and the right time and the right moment. God appeared to him. He was a Navi he was a prophet from before that. And God appeared to him and asked him to go, rise up and go to Nineveh, the big city. Did some research, and I think Shlomit mentioned to me that at that point of time in history, Nineveh was the largest city in the world. That's why it's called the largest city in the world. If you don't mind, I'm just going to mute here. All right, there we go. He should go there, and he should cry to them or proclaim to them, because they did the wickedness became too much. And what was the wickedness? What did they do wrong? They had two things. They had some improper sexual activities, as well as theft. They stole from each other, they stole from others, they were a bunch of thieves. Now, that in general, for years and years and years, they were good people. That's why they had good core, they had sort of good DNA, good potential, and therefore it was worth talking to them. Sometimes it's not, when you talk to some people that don't have a chance, don't stand a chance, don't bother wasting your breath. But here it was not the case. So therefore, God sent Yona to them. What does Yona do? And we all know the third verse, Vayakom Yona livroach Tarshisha. So Yona rose up and he flees. He runs away to Tarshish. We spoke about Tarshish, where it is. It's in Spain or in on the banks of Africa or Turkey. Various ideas of where various different opinions of where it is. So he runs away from Milifnei Hashem, not from God, but from God's face, from in front of God. So this is what prompts people to explain that he was running away from the land of Israel. He was in the land of Israel that we read in Nitzavim in a couple of weeks. We're going to read that the face of God, the words of God, the face of God, the favor of God is the land of Israel, and therefore he's watching the land of Israel carefully and in a more serious way, closely. So Yonah goes out of Israel. He's going away to a place which is not outside of Israel. And what does he do? He is in Bet HaMikdash in Yerushalayim, so he darts to the closest airport, the closest seaport, which is in Yafo, straight west. Vayered Yafo, Vayimtzao Nia, and he found Yafo was a place, a marina that had a lot of. It's a port with a lot of ships, a lot of boats, and he found a boat, Ba Tarshish, that its destination is Tarshish. He wants to go there. Tarshish was another center of trade. We'll see why he wanted to go there. Vaiten tzchara, so he pays the fare. not really the fare for himself, not just a ticket for himself. It seems in those days, they didn't have schedule so much. They were docking somewhere and they were waiting for customers. And they were filling up, and when they filled up the cargo and the people, they had enough money paid for them to go, so they left. He wanted to leave right away. So he hired whatever is left. He hired a whole boat. Vayiten schara, vayered ba, and he went down to the boat. Lavo imahem tarshisha milifnei Hashem, and he wanted to join with them to run away again. And it says again where he's going, and he's going from Hashem, from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So endless explanations of why he decided to run away from God. Can you run from God? Come on. I mean, someone who's a prophet, someone who's forget about a prophet, just a religious Jew. Forget about a religious Jew, anyone. Can you run away from God? God is everywhere. God knows where you are, what you do, and what does it mean to run away from God? Makes no sense, right? So everybody explains what it is. They all, because we are reading it on Yom Kippur, the consensus, 100%, is that it's for good reason, with good intention. It was wrong of him, he was told later that he was wrong, but it was absolutely good intentions. So what were the good intentions? So the Midrash is telling us there are several approaches, several aspects. We're going to try to cover as many as possible. We can probably have a couple of sessions just on that, but we're not going to use all of the time on this, but a significant portion of it. So he says he's going away from the land of Israel where the Shekhinah, the eyes of God or the attention of God is not as exact. Is less. It's not, and therefore he's not revealed. God is not revealing Himself outside of the land of Israel, and therefore he is as a prophet. He just wanted to turn off the volume. Don't talk to me. I don't want to go. We'll see in a second why he doesn't want to go. I don't want to go. I don't want to talk to these people. I don't want them to do tshuva. I don't want this whole thing. And therefore, I'm going to go out of the reception zone, okay, where I'm as a prophet can receive the message. I'm going to go out to the outside of Israel, and therefore I won't hear it. And why? Because he feels that God has been sending prophet after prophet after prophet to the Jewish people, and at that time they were not listening, and it was going from bad to worse, and the spiritual state until the destruction of the first temple, of the first bite of Beit Rishon, right? So he felt that if he's going to go out there, and those people have the potential, he felt, to listen and to do the right thing, and therefore it will reflect very badly on the Jewish people. The Jewish people were asked several times to do the right thing, to do tshuva, and they didn't. And here you go, come Yona, tells them a message, and they do tshuva, and poof, it's all good. And indeed, we see that every word that we, even the Havamina, even what we thought and didn't happen, eventually did happen. Okay? The fact that Nineveh didn't turn upside down, and God says that Nineveh will turn upside down. It didn't happen now, but 40 years later it did happen. The same thing with Yona. The fact that Yona was suspecting that it's going to reflect badly on us, he was right, because it did. How do we know? Because in Tzfanya, a later prophet, it says that it mentions it in Eicha Rabbah, in a medrash on the book of Eicha, that the dove city, Yerushalayim, is called the dove city, the city of the dove. Dove is an analogy for of a kosher bird and a peace, a peaceful city. So the dove city didn't learn from Yona. Yona is both a name and a name of a bird. So the dove city, the Ira Yona, didn't learn from Yona himself, from Nineveh. So whatever he suspected actually happened. So he was trying to avert it. He gave his life. Humoser nefesh. He gave his life because he ended up in the stomach of a fish, right? He basically, practically, was not alive. In the stomach of a fish, you can't really stay alive. So he gave his life in order to save us from embarrassment. There were several prophets. Some prophets like Jeremiah, Yirmiyah, was mentioning, that it ain't fitting for the Jewish people to act that way, and it's not in God's honor that we're acting this way. So he was worried about our honor and God's honor. Eliyahu was worried more about God's honor. He wasn't so much careful about our honor. He says, you guys have to. It was later. Eliyahu was later. Eliyahu was later than Yirmiyahu, but before Jonah. He was saying, you have to listen to what God says and forget about your honor. And Jonah was worried only about our honor, about the Jewish people. And that's another reason why we're reading it in Yom Kippur, to sort of put our faith in the center, to put our the results or the path of the Jewish people in the center of the universe. Every word here that we're reading in this book has to do with Yom Kippur. Every single word. There is not one extra word here that is not related to Yom Kippur. We'll try to point it again and again and again, at least until we read it on Yom Kippur, so we really get to understand what the idea is here. Now, there is another thing why he didn't want the city of Nineveh to do tshuva, because as we mentioned last time, the city of Nineveh eventually 200 years later would be responsible for the exile of the 10 tribes. Their king Sancherib would be the one who would conquer the land of Israel, most of it, except Jerusalem, and would take the 10 tribes away. And Yonah, and it happened by them, because they did tshuva, because they were worthy of this kind of reward, so to speak, to have one up on us. So he didn't want them to do tshuva. So he said, you know what, I'm not going to send the message, they're not going to listen, and by the time I get there, or someone else gets there, they will be too late, and they will sort of they will lose the moment, and they're not going to do tshuva anymore, and therefore the Jewish people are not going to are not going to suffer from them conquering the land. So that's another aspect. Now, there is one more aspect that was mentioned, and that is the fact that at that time, Yonah was an older man. He was practicing before as a full-fledged Navi for a while, and one of his prophecies was to tell the people of Yerushalayim, shape up, or Yerushalayim is going to be lost. And he was sending the message, and what do you know? The Yerushalmi people listened, and they did tshuva, and he worked for them, and the whole problem with the whole destruction was pushed several hundred years. So what did the people of Yerushalayim ascertain from it? What did they decide to call Mr. Yonah? Liar, liar, pants on fire. You told us that the city is going to be destroyed. No, kish, wasn't. What are you talking about? You're a liar. So now he's already assigned that title of a liar, because he said that the city will be destroyed, and if they don't do tshuva, so of course they chose to just say the first piece, and they did the tshuva, and so now he's a liar. Now, what happens is, he didn't want that now he's going to go to a non-Jewish city, and over there they will listen to him, and over there they're not going to call him a liar, so it's going to reflect even worse on us. So that's not good. or they're going to listen and they're going to do tshuva, and now he's going to be double liar, which means the people of Nineveh and anybody else who hears the story will say that God is not consistent. He doesn't know what is he promising destruction once, twice, nothing happens. So let's not believe in God. So he was thinking that it's going to reduce belief in God rather than increase. Now, so that's another aspect. A third aspect that we have to discuss is there is a halakha in Sanhedrin that a prophet who was given a prophecy and he's sitting on it and not giving out the message it's a big infraction. It's punishable by death. Mitabedei shamayim. How can he accept, receive this message and God tells him to do something and he doesn't do it? That's not that's absolutely not allowed. So how come he's even a prophet afterwards? How come we have a whole book? We're reading it in Yom Kippur. It's part of the Tanakh. God is talking to him again afterwards. He didn't. Somebody like that. There's no 3 strikes. 1 strike and you're out. Your prophet, God told you something, you didn't do it. You ain't prophet anymore. So what happened here? So there are many explanations. One of them is that if the person received the prophecy and then sat on it and decided not to do it, that's one thing. But if right away they didn't accept, and they, no, I'm out of here, I'm not doing it, right on the spot, that's not called sitting on the message, withholding the message. He's just refusing the task, which is a problem, which is a mistake, but it's not punishable by death. It's not sitting. It's not taking and preventing the message from getting there. You tell, and he learned it basically from Moshe. If you recall, Moshe met God for the first time with a burning bush, right? And God told him, "I want you to go to save the Jews from Mitzrayim and give a message to Pharaoh." And what did he say? No, not me. I'm stuttering. I can't speak well, and it's not for. Just find shlachna b'yat shlach. Find someone else, buddy. Just go publish. On the internet something. Help wanted, a prophet. A leader, not me. So Jonah had precedents before. He thought that it's possible to do. Now, by the way, because one of the reasons that Moshe did not end up bringing us all the way to the land of Israel is because of that sentence. Find someone else. Okay, I'll find someone else. I'll find Yoshua. So he was punished for it. And obviously Yonah was also punished for it. But Moshe was not called Kovesh Nevuato. Moshe was not punished for refusing for withholding the message, for sitting on the message, because he did it on the spot. God spoke to him and says, "I want to send you." No, don't send me. So the same thing with Yonah. That's what happened here. Now, another interesting aspect is, what was he telling them? He was telling them, basically, don't steal. And the other mitzvahs. But basically he was telling him things that are written in the Torah. You're not supposed to steal. Even a Ben Noach, even someone who's not keeping the Jewish faith, they're not allowed to steal. So it's like sending a messenger and telling, God is telling you to put on tefillin. Okay, we know. It's written that we have a book. What are you saying? So because of that, it's not some special prophecy. And therefore, it's not rising to the level of someone who's withholding a prophecy from the recipient. Okay, let's talk for a second about the fact that the Shekhinah is not in overseas. It's not when you go outside of the land of Israel, God is not communicating with you. Okay? So it's mentioned in the Gemara, and it's also mentioned that it's not true. It's not so. Why? because a later prophet, the prophet of Yechezkel, in the first chapter, right, it says the words of God were to Yechezkel ben Buzi Kohen, right? The Yechezkel, the son of Buzi, the Kohen. Be'ur Kasdim, God spoke to him in the birthplace of Avraham Avinu, which we all know was not in Eretz Israel. So what are you telling me that God is not talking to a prophet in outside of Israel? So all the rabbis are saying that the point is that a prophet always starting to receive the prophecy in the land of Israel. There is never was a prophet that started their mission or started becoming a prophet outside of Israel. Same thing with Yechezkel. He was in the land of Israel. He was a prophet. Then he moved, and he received an additional prophecy outside of the land of Israel. So he wouldn't have worked for Yonah either way to run away. Now, there are those who say that he didn't really try to just step outside of the boundaries of Israel, because he could have gone by on land. Why did he board a ship? Would have been almost the same to go outside of the boundaries of Israel by land, on land. Because when someone is in the sea, their mind is not calm. Especially in those days, we're not talking about Queen Elizabeth I or II or III that are, big behemoth, big machines that are, you don't feel that you're even on the sea most of the time. We're talking about flimsy pieces of wood that were floating, and very commonly were stopping to float and sinking. So someone who's in the sea doesn't have the peace of mind or the state of mind to receive prophecy. So that's what he was trying to be in a place where God is not going to reveal them when he's sort of busy with the sea, without Dramamine. So, and another thing, he boarded a ship. The rabbis say later that are full of idol worshippers from the 70 nations. He had the representative from each one of the 70 nations, sailors from all over, and they were all idol worshippers. And he felt that in this kind of an environment, God is not going to show up and start giving. You need the purity, you need to be a clean place, cleanliness. When you're sleeping and in the same room, you have a couple of idols and a couple of others. People are bound to the idols. This is not the place to receive a prophecy from God. So that's what he felt. There are other ideas, and I think we'll leave it at that for now. Let me just see. Another question was why was he really so sure that the Jewish people are not going to listen and the Goyim will? So he said that the Jewish people in those days, we had the Bet HaMikdash, and we know that Bet HaMikdash does something. When you bring a sacrifice in Bet HaMikdash, that does something to us. So they felt that as long as we keep the Bet HaMikdash functioning, that expunges, that erases, that purges our bad deeds. So why bother? Why bother doing tshuva? So that's what he felt was the feeling in Am Yisrael, and that's why they didn't do tshuva. And finally, he went to Tarshish, and he went to a place which is a metropolitan, big place, and he went with a big ship rather than just running alone, on a donkey or by foot away. He had money, obviously. He paid the entire load of the ship, so he could have bought a horse and run away with it alone. But he wanted to make a splash. He wanted everybody to know eventually that he is running away and he's not listening to the words of God, and he's not. In order to diminish, to make them feel that it's not that important what he about to say to them, to really try to avert the catastrophe of them doing tshuva. Because if they do tshuva, God will forgive them, and then they will come and destroy the land of Israel, etc., etc. So he was trying to create a whole, that's what the Chatam Sofer is saying, very interesting. Anyway, but that is, so he ran away. That's the bottom line. So what happens? Immediately, V'Hashem itil ruach gdola al hayam. So God created a mighty wind, big storm, and el hayam, right, upon the sea. Vayi sar gadol, and the waves were amazing and big and bayam, right? Va'oniya chishva li'shaver, and the boat was thinking, they're translating a danger of breaking. It wasn't danger. It looked like the boat is about to break. It looked like the boat was making the sounds of a boat that's about to break. Number one, the sailors were thinking that it's going to break, and there is an interesting interpretation that they actually wanted it to break. Because in those days, a boat that is going to break usually would not break in the middle of the sea. It would sink in the middle of the sea, but it would not break. It would break usually when it gets closer to the beach, closer to the shore, and will break on the rocks, as it gets closer to the shore. So they were basically saying, let it be broken, meaning we'll get closer rather than we all sink and die here. Anybody was wanting to ask something?
Yeah, Jaffa was an Israeli city, Israeli port, or Canaanite, or what?
At that time, I think Jaffa, for the most part, was an Amorite city for most of the years. At this point, I'm not sure. I can check. I'm not sure. But it's likely was more of an Amorite city.
Just curious. All right.
Yeah. Good question. So the boat is making the sounds of about to be broken. Vayir'u malachim. I learned something very interesting. A malach is a sailor, right, in Hebrew. But the malach is also, if you take away the nikud, you can read it as melach. Melach is salt. Why? Because the sailors are those people who can smell the salt of the sea, and by the taste of the salt, they know exactly how the sea is going to behave. So that's why it's called malachim, like melach. That's something new that I learned. Anyway, so the malachim, vayiro malachim vayzeku ish el Elohav. So the sailors see, and they all, each one, because as we mentioned, they were all from 70 nations. They all, so they had different gods. So they started calling each to his own god, and save me, because they saw that it's very unnatural. It was an unnatural occurrence, the way it is, the size of the storm, the way the storm came about. There are those who say that they looked afar, they watched afar, and they saw other boats, traveling with no problem, and it's just their boat that is got into an unbelievable storm. It didn't make any sense. It's very miraculous, very unnatural. So therefore, if it's not natural, there is a reason for it. And the reason is godly. So let's talk to my God and see what, maybe He can help me. ויטילו את הכלים אשר באונייה אל הים. So one thing they start to do is to call their gods. That didn't work well. So they started throwing the heavy stuff, the cargo, overboard. So if the ship is lighter, it will float, obviously. Now, those who say that the kelim, they would some of them threw away the avodah zarah that they used, because they called their gods and it didn't work. So, so maybe we'll throw the God overboard. Maybe it'll work better. Get rid of the God. Maybe the God will be in the sea. But the bottom line is that caused the destruction of and eradication of some of their avodah zarah, some of their idols. And they also say, if we have, ani chashuv kemet, someone who doesn't have money is considered like dead. So if we're supposed to die, so let's just throw away everything we have, all of the wealth or whatever the possessions, and then we will be like poor people, and then it will be as if we're dead, and we will be spared. Now, so Yona. So what does Yona do? Yona knew exactly why it's all happening. He knew that it's his fault. He knew that he was doing the wrong thing, and he promptly went down to the bottom of the vessel, and he went to sleep. That's very odd. Went to sleep. He didn't even try davening because he didn't want to be saved, right? He wanted to die. He said it's better that I will die than the Jewish people will suffer. Now it's very interesting that until now we say oniyah, ship, boat, right? And now we say sfina, which is vessel. Why? Because what's the difference between oniyah and sfina? Vessel means a boat that has some hidden places, which is where he went. He went down. Sfina, milshon safun, milshon hid, from the word hidden. So he went to the lower part of the ship, where it's like a vessel, and he went the lowest possible because he knew that it's all because of him, and he thought as soon as the ship is going to start taking in water, the water will flow to the bottom of the boat, and he will be down there, and if he's not going to survive, the deed will be done, and everybody else will be spared, because he did not want everybody else to die. He had no ill feelings towards the other sailors, and he didn't want anybody to get hurt. So he said, let me go to the most vulnerable place, and when it goes down, I'll go down first, and then maybe the rest will be spared. And what's the point of sleeping? The point of sleeping is that someone who's depressed, many times they don't have the strength to get out of bed, right? That's what you hear, because they don't find the strength or the reason to walk around, to roam around awake. They don't feel that they're contributing anything, and that's what he felt at the moment. He said, "Let me just go to sleep. I'm not." It says metukash nata oved. It's someone who's is a goner. Might as well go to sleep and not feel anything, because there's no point in staying around. Vaikrav elav Rav HaChovel vayomer lo. So Rav HaChovel is a captain. And again, just like the sailors, malachim is from the word melach, chovel is from the word chevel. Rav Chovel is a captain, chevel is the ropes, right? And we all know that in those days, most of the big boats were sailing with a rope, with sails that is being managed with the rope. So he's Rav Chovel. He's the master of all the ropes. He's the one in charge. Now, what does he do? The Rav Chovel, the captain, he doesn't make a big stink. He's telling him quietly, Malecha Nirdam, which became one of the most famous, if not the famous phrase from this book. Malecha Nirdam. What with you, sleepyhead? What with you? A person who goes to sleep. What is this? Kum kra Elohecha. So you should go. You should rise up and call your God. We're all calling our gods. You should call yours as well. Maybe yours is the problem. Ulai tasheta Elokim lanu velo noven. Maybe God will catch himself. God God will change his mind. Eshtonot is, when somebody is losing their eshtonot, they're losing their faculties. So maybe God will regain his faculties and will agree to save us, and we're not going to be lost. Now, what happened is the Rav Chovel was going all the way to the bottom of the ship where everybody was on top. When there is the ship is about to break and there is a storm, most people go up not to get trapped. And the Rav Chovel felt, and maybe he took the count, and he felt that somebody is missing. So he went looking, and he found him in the bottom of the ship, which is not a place where, that's why it was sort of a private discussion there. So it obviously was very odd to him. What is you're not afraid. You're not praying. You know that it's because of you. Maybe it's maybe you tell us. Maybe somehow we'll figure out what's going on. Malecha nirdam. Now, what does it mean? The obvious thing is that Yona was wearing Jewish clothes, right? He was wearing talis cotton, yarmulke. He looked like a Jew, right? So the question is, why would an idol worshiper like the captain would come to this Jew, tell him go call your God? If you call we don't believe in your God, right? Well, what's the story? The point is that at the very least in those days, they all knew that there is God, our God. It's just that there is also their God. And there is the God of all gods. The gods of all gods is our God. But they have an intermediary, a minister, a sub-god, a vice president, some middle tier level that they're dealing with. But they did, for sure, after all of the miracles that happened to the Jewish people in the past few hundred years, they knew that our God is someone, that exists, and you need to. So it was easy for the captain to tell him, go call to your God. Maybe he's going to work with our gods to save the situation. There is an obvious reason here to understand why we're reading this whole thing on Yom Kippur. And one of them is that the exile that we're in, it's like a big boat ride. And the seas and the water is not calm at all, and there are storms out there. Watching the news these days is not hard to understand. And the boat is about to break and sink at any moment. And the point is that you can't sleep. You can't give up. You're not allowed, to go to the bottom of the boat and be depressed and go to sleep. You have to stand up. You have to rise. You have to call God. The Lubavitcher Rebbe mentioned many years ago that this whole idea of Yona was the reason we're reading the book of Yona is to teach us two things. Number one is to teach us that you can't run away from God. There's no, you can't say, well, God is not in my business. He's not when I travel. He's not, he's not watching me. If I'm forgotten, there is no such thing. God is everywhere, and everything that happens is known by Him and managed by Him and driven by Him, and therefore you can run away. But then people can ask, okay, so if everything is spirituality and God is everywhere, and we know, but what's in it for me? I go to work, I don't feel, I don't see. It's very hard for us to connect when you're running our day to day. When you're in the ship in the middle of the sea, in a boat, you don't really think that God is here. So that's the whole point. The point is that we should not feel that, and we should know that even when we run away, and we shouldn't run away, we should there is law of the tikvatein, right? There is the hope is not lost ever, and we always are going to are required to repent, required to call out to God, and God will listen, and God is listening. So that's another reason why we're reading it, or the main reason why we're reading it in Yom Kippur. Vayomru ish el re'ehu. So after while the captain is talking to the sleepyhead down in the bottom, the other sailors are saying to each other, "Lechu v'napila goralot," which is very odd. Let's have a lottery. Let's throw a lot. Okay, lots, many of them, and that will tell us v'neda b'shel mi ha'ra'a azot lanu. Since when you convict someone, for with a lottery system? That's really odd. Vayapilu goralot vayipol hagoral al Yona. So they cast a lot of lots, and they all fell on Yona. So what they felt is as follows. And again, going back to Yom Kippur, there is nothing is a chance in the world. There is no such thing as a lottery that it's coming from without thinking, without meaning. Everything has a meaning. So they all tried to cast a lot based on their belief. Each one of them, 70 lots. And they all, so if, when you take the statistics, if you have so many lots being casted, some will fall on this person, some on another person, there will be some even distribution, some sort of a bell shape of some kind, so the probability of all of the lots pointing to one person is very slim to none. And nonetheless, it was the case. So they realized that after so many lots that are falling on him, something is wrong with this guy. This is the cause. If all of our magic lots or whatever, even if you don't believe it all, something is wrong here, and it's pointing to him. Now, Yom Kippur, what are the lots that are happening in Yom Kippur? We know there is a lot that's happening in Bet HaMikdash, and there are the two goats, right? One of them, Susirim, one of them is being sacrificed, and one of them is being thrown off the cliff to represent all of our, what should have happened to us and didn't, and the fact that we're going to be have a good year. So we are casting a lot in Bet HaMikdash on Yom Kippur, again, to let us know that there is nothing really connected to chance here. It's all by design, and it's all happening for a reason. One more pasuk, and then I think we'll finish. I don't think the rabbi is having a class today, so we'll just do one more pasuk. So vayamru elav. So then they continued. So after the lot fell pointed to Yonah, so it wasn't enough for them with the lot. They didn't take the lot as like the last, the last verdict. They had to figure out what's happening here. It gave them a clue, but it didn't really cemented his fate. So they asked him, "Tell us, agidanan lanu, ba'asher lemiyera azot lanu." Why is this problem coming to us? You're the one that was appointed by all the lots to tell us what happened. Not necessarily that he is the reason for it, but he is the one that would know to point them in the right direction. What happens? Ma melachtecha? What is your business? What do you do? Maybe you're a thief, and that's why it happens. Maybe you're a holy man, and because you left your post, that's why it happens. They were trying to figure out ume'ayin tavo, where you came from. Maybe it's the people that of your town that were that's having a problem, and it's the verdict and the decree is on the people of your town, and because you happen to be here, it's coming with you. Me'ayin tavo, ma'artzecha, what is your land? Ve'ei mizeh amatain, from which people are you? And they obviously were trying to figure out what is the reason that all of that is happening, and why him. He looked like it's out of character, which he's telling them, which we're proceeding to tell them, which we'll learn about the next time. But basically, he's telling is the realizing that he might be the solution for their dilemma of what's going on. Anyway, next time, 8 o'clock, we'll continue. Hopefully we'll gain more speed and be able to get most of it before Yom Kippur. So thank you.
Thank you, Lord.
Thank you.